He had a tone that cut through the guitars. He was like a lead guitarist, the way he sang. And it was a passion and a fury that I've never heard anybody get to this day.
He never sang flat. His pitching was always spot on. And he could reach notes that would have dogs sitting up on their hind legs.
And it's all the people who work on tours and who go to a lot of concerts. They know whether you are hitting it or you're not. And he always hit it. And that's what I really respect the most.
Steve Marriott's career in show business, if you like to call it that, actually goes way back to 1960, when he appeared in the original London stage production of Oliver. Steve was in the show for something like 18 months, and he was also a member of the Italia Conte stage school, which was probably the stage school to sort of belong to in those days.
I am a little tin soldier that wants to jump into your fire. You are a look in your eye, a dream passing by in the sky.
He was in Oliver for a good 2 to 3 years. It was a long while, I think.
Steve went on to do lots of child acting. He appeared in several films, including Heavens Above with Peter Sellers.
You know, I was so surprised when he suddenly come home and said he was giving it all up. I'm going to be a pop star. But within a little while of him saying that, he was. It was amazing, really.
In 1963, Steve cut his very first solo single for Decca, a track called Give 'Em My Regards. Steve actually penned the B-side himself, a track called Imaginary Love. Steve went on to sort of form a band called The Frantics, and after that, a band called Steve Marriott's Moments. In 1964, Steve and his band, Steve Marriott's Moments, actually cut a version of the Kinks song, You Really Got Me. It was for the US market only, and didn't sell particularly well at the time, although these days it's very, very collectible. The Moments broke up in sort of early 65, and Steve was really sort of, you know, without a job for a while, and he took a temporary job in a local music shop near where he lived, the J60 Music Bar in Manor Park, East London. And it was while working in the J60 that he first met Ronnie and Kenny. Ronnie came in to buy a guitar and struck up quite a friendship with Steve. Steve invited him back to his house to listen to his record collection, and yeah, the rest is history, really.
Who could it be but the Small Faces?
Over bridge of sighs, to rest my eyes in shades of green, under dreaming spires, to Ichiku Park, that's where I've been. What did you do there? I got high. What did you feel there? Well, I cried. But why the tears there? Tell you why. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. I feel inclined to blow my They all come out to groove about, be nice and have fun and listen. I tell you what I'll do. What will you I'd do? Like to go there now with you. You can miss out school. Won't that be? Why go to learn the words of fool? What will we do there? We'll get high. What will we touch there? We'll touch the sky. We'll dry the tears there. I'll tell you why. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. I feel inclined to blow my mind, get hung up, feed the ducks with a bun. They all come out to groove about, be nice and have fun in the sun. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. Ha! It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful. It's all too beautiful.
You going to mug me?
I'm not going to mug you.
Is that gorgeous or what, eh?
And I believe I can run a decent marathon.
Thank you very much.
Download Veely now.
I mainly remember Steve Marriott for having an incredible, well, his vocal talent's a legend, but a real energy. You know, when he got on stage, it was real dynamite to watch this guy. And I mean, I'm talking about the Small Faces, of course. And you knew why they were called the Small Faces, because I mean, I was probably a head higher than all of the guys in the band.
There she is. Come on up. Hello. What's your name?
Kathy Bozeman.
Kathy. Look over there. There we are.
Hello.
Good Abend, Kathy. Hast du eine Frage an Steve? Come on over, Steve.
Hello.
Say hello. What do you want to ask him?
I'd like to know how long that their group has been together and how they got together.
Wie lang ist die Gruppe zusammen und wie sie zusammengekommen sind? Steve?
Well, we've been together for 1 year now, exactly 1 year, and we all got together in a pub.
Wouldn't it be nice to get on with me neighbours? But they make it very clear they've got no room for ravers. They stop me from grooving, they bang on the wall. They're doing me busting, it's no good at all.
When I was about 14, when I first saw the Small Faces, and there was a tremendous reinvention of rock, really, with the mod culture. There was the Who and the Small Faces. They were the two biggest mod bands.
Here we all are, sitting in a rainbow.
From 65 to 67, but they were really the sort of model icons of the era. Steve Marriott in particular, I mean, Steve Marriott really was probably the most copied sort of pop star of the day. You know, he was that big an influence. There was thousands of Steve Marriotts walking around on the street at that time. I mean, I myself remember having my hair straightened out and parted down the middle just to look like Steve Marriott.
We were in a package tour, and the bill was Free, A Crazy World of Arthur Brown, Joe Cocker, the Small Faces, and the Who, and that was all on one bill. Great bill. And we went all over the country. Anyway, the first show, it was in Bristol. We were driving up the motorway and in our little van. And about halfway up, we heard this big honking and hooting. And it was the Small Faces in their Bentley. And there were 5 pairs of bums hanging out the window. They were mooning us.
Yeah, we did an immediate tour all over Europe,
with Small Faces, Piano, Twice as Nice, us, and it was to promote Immediate Records. And we went into Paris, in a hotel in Paris, and we were up in the rooms having a drink with the boys, and Stevie said to the roadies, go and get the guitars and amplifiers out. So I went downstairs and brought all the amplifiers up, and they started playing an impromptu thing, but inside the hotel room. And the noise, I mean, you could hear it, like, all over the place. So all of a sudden, the management of the hotel came up and said, you've got to stop immediately, you know. But Stevie wouldn't do that, you know. He was one of those characters, he's a Londoner, and he was a bit flash, you know. And he was going like, screw you, we're going to start rehearsing. And they had to call the police in to sort it all out, you know, and he was very nearly arrested for making a... But they stopped him at the end.
During the summer vacation, when I was 16, 17, that area, that's when the Herd asked me to come and play rhythm guitar as a stand-in for the summer holiday, summer vacation. So I did that, and at the end of the year, they asked me to join.
Who wanted her because she took my loneliness and me.
Small Faces got asked by Johnny Halliday, who's like the French Elvis, and he's still going strong. Glyn Johns was the producer engineer, and who I'd known for years, and he was asked to bring either Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, or Jimi Hendrix, to be the added guitarist with the Small Faces. So Glyn said, well, they're all a little busy. How about you take Pete Frampton? So, thank you, Glyn. I ended up, my dream was to play with the Small Faces. Here I am, a week's worth of sessions in France, and I'm playing lead guitar with the Small Faces. So it was great. At that point, Steve, I believe, brought it up to the band that maybe I should join. They weren't too thrilled about the idea, and Steve was feeling that he couldn't get anywhere further with the Small Faces.
We had no money at all at the end of the Small Faces, and we had to really scrape the money together to buy Beehive Cottage, which was not expensive.
Andrew Oldham has made the Rolling Stones an established group. They can afford to take longer holidays than the Small Faces, a group who've recently risen to the top and now have to work long hours to stay there. Don Arden, their manager, has yet to achieve the Oldham empire.
If I've ever exploited anybody, it's for their own benefit. It's because they want to be exploited. I never exploit anybody that doesn't want to be exploited. There's no point to it.
formation of Humble Pie started in the summer of '68. At the time I was playing with a band in Cambridge that included Rick Wills on bass, who went on to play with Foreigner, and Tim Rennick on guitar, who went on to play second guitar for Pink Floyd and Elton John and all kinds of people. And Steve had met Peter Frampton and got to know him, and at that time the general public only knew Peter as a pretty boy, face of '68, teeny bopper. Steve, being the genius he was for spotting good talent, in meeting Peter, realised what a great guitar player he was. So Steve called me again in the summer of '68 and said, I've got this friend of mine who needs a drummer. His name's Peter Frampton. He invited me down to his cottage to meet Peter, and I heard firsthand through them just jamming what an absolutely sensational guitar player Peter was. And the next step was for Peter to come and see me play, which he did. A couple of days later he came to Cambridge and saw my band play, and he pretty much right there and then said, yeah, I want to use you to form this band of mine. So originally it was Peter's band, and I was the first recruit, so it was our band. And between the summer and the end of that year, we were having trouble finding other people. And on New Year's Eve night of '68, '69, I had just gotten home from my band's New Year's Eve gig, and the phone rings, and it's Steve Marriott. And he says, how would you like me to join your and Peter's band? Then he said, by the way, I have a bass player who wants to come with me, Greg Ridley from Spooky Tooth, who at that time was the most respected, rightfully so, bass players in England. And I said, that sounds like a plan to me, sir. And he then called Peter and asked Peter what he thought. And
I was at Glyn John's house, just socialising. We'd just come back from the Paris sessions, and Glyn was playing me this album of this new band that he thought was really good and probably would be very successful. And we were halfway through listening to Led Zeppelin 1, which he just told me he'd recorded and mixed in 10 days. And my jaw was on the floor at this point, you know, and the phone rings. And it's Steve calling from somewhere in London. They'd just played Small Faces had just played a show. And he said, I've left. And he said, can I join your band? So I said, yeah, of course you can.
Take me back to see what I left behind, yeah. Ooh, superficial people told him where to go.
experimentation was everything. You know, we were doing lots of different things as per recording outside, and we were using Andy Johns, Glyn Johns' brother. We were recording during the day, and then he was doing Jack Bruce's Songs for a Tailor at night. You know, that's the period. Basically, it was like we were all finding our way at that time, and really learning. I was learning a lot from obviously Andy Johns and Steve, who'd had a lot more experience recording than I had. And anything went, you know. If Jerry wanted to play piano, he played piano. If Steve wanted to play drums, he played drums. Whatever, you know, it didn't matter. We were just doing whatever we wanted to do. And if Jerry wrote a song, we recorded that. If Greg wrote a song, we recorded. It wasn't. There was no like, okay, this is what we're going to do. It was like, whatever anybody wants to do, this is the band, you know. It was very democratic.
Alabama 69 was Steve's song about how freedom from slavery and emancipation in general still wasn't nearly as far down the road as it should be. And in terms of how we recorded it the backtrack, in fact, and some of the vocal, I believe, in a field behind Magdalen Labour Village Hall where we used to rehearse.
I recorded it. I had a Revox, a Studio Revox, and we were all outside this. We used to rehearse at this local hall down in Essex, in the country near where Steve lived. And it was during the summer, and we decided to go outside. Jerry brought a snare and a bass drum, I think, or a hi-hat outside, and we positioned ourselves, we balanced ourselves by how far we were away from the mic, sort of how they used to do it when it was just one man. And so that was actually recorded outside. I think you can hear, like, if you listen closely, you can hear cows in the background.
As a guitar player, when I heard Frampton play, and as a singer, when I heard Steve sing, I mean, the first time I heard his voice, I remember Scott Muni, he was like, and now we have Steve Marriott from Humble Pie, you know, that good deep voice he has. And, you know, they played, maybe it was Live at the Fillmore or Shaky Jake or something from, you know, an earlier album, Safe as Yesterday, something like that. I just, you know, I mean, the way I choose what I love is if the hair goes up on my arms, you know. And for certain people like Otis Redding or Al Green, you know, Steve Marriott, that happens to this day.
He could play the harmonica like, you know, like Alexis Corner, like the real greats. I mean, he was a really gifted musician. He could play the Hammond organ like nobody else. People just look at him as a little guy with a huge voice, you know. But he was multi-talented, you know, tremendous personality.
In Abilene, I had to use a gun, well, for my own sake. Shot a man down when I was just 18. From that day, they call me Shaky Jake. Shaky Jake, boy, what you gonna do? gonna make a break. I cut my teeth on a brand new nine. I'm a devil's own son. I'm shaking, Jake. I said, shake it, shake, boy. What you gonna do? Texas Rangers coming after you. Here's the price you pay for one mistake. Get off the streets, it's shake and shake. I keep on the run. I travel by night. I don't need anyone. Someone, Sunday, somewhere's gonna see me right. Take a hole about 6 foot deep. Pretty light for a soul to take. Don't want flowers and nobody's gonna weep. He lies that outlaw, shaking, shake. Shaking, shake, boy, what you gonna do? Texas Rangers coming after you. Here's the price you pay for one mistake. Get off the streets, it's shaking, shake, shake.
We were as acoustic as we were electric. We all loved playing acoustic stuff. We decided that the way, this was the introductory tour, first of all in England and then in America. I came on first, did a song called Take Me Back, just one acoustic. Then I believe Greg came on, we did a number together. Jerry did a number, sang a number. And then Steve came on and we did For Your Love.
That went down like a lead balloon in America in 1969, where everything was rock till you drop.
I'll give you everything and more, that's for sure. Bring you diamond rings and things right to your door. To thrill you with delight.
It was basically the old Yardbirds song, which we loved, and we did an acoustic version of it that went on for days, literally. And sometimes it was short and sometimes it was long, but usually it was very long. So we weren't as well known, obviously, in the States at that time, so to do this was a little bit self-indulgent, I think.
Unfortunately, by the time we got to America, Andrew's woes with Immediate Record, the business problems were in full swing, and it was a sinking ship in terms of the label, which we were blissfully unaware of until we got home from the first tour of America to find out that Immediate had just gone bankrupt.
We ran out of money in LA And I came back from lunch one day and found my suitcase outside the door. My door was locked. The hotel, the Ramada Inn. And that was it. We barely had enough money to get our tickets and go back home. That was when Immediate Records went bust.
Andrew, by his own admission, will tell you back then he was horrible at business. He tried his best, but what he did for us was he forewarned us that the bankruptcy was about to go down, and that, technically speaking, put us in a mode of freedom. And he said, here's a number, call this guy, Jerry Moss, because he wants the band.
Humble Pie was a very, very important signing for A&M. Not wanting to get too technical about all this, but we had established a company in England in 1969. And prior to that time, all the English repertoire we released in America pretty much came from a couple of sources. The offers started quite reasonable, and then I realized I was in some sort of a bidding war with Atlantic and Ahmet Ertegun, and of course we had to keep going higher and higher and higher.
To thrill you with delight, I'll bring you diamonds bright. There'll be days that will excite. Make you dream of me at night. Oh, your love, yes, oh, your love,
yeah. Years later, Ahmet at some party said to me, how much do you end up paying for Humble Pie? This was, 25 years afterwards. He says, I had that deal for $25,000, and before I knew it, it was whatever it was. And I remembered it was something close to about a $400,000 investment, which was a lot of money for us at the time. But I really wanted this band, and I was thrilled to have it.
We were then appointed to Dee Anthony as a manager and Frank Barcelona as an agent, because they had a fearsome reputation in terms of their ability to break British acts in America.
To thrill you with delight, I'm gonna bring you diamonds bright. There'll be days that will excite, yeah, make you dream of me at night.
At that point in his life, Steve was at his absolute best in terms of his internal personality and his generosity to other musicians. And he wanted to not be the front man. He wanted the group to have three front men, being himself, Greg, and Peter. And he respected the fact that, after all, it was originally Peter's band.
I was frustrated. And, when a band works that closely together, I don't care how good friends you are, you start getting on each other's nerves.
Dee could see the power that Steve had as a frontman. Slowly but surely, it evolved to where Steve became more of the frontman, and we were getting harder, tougher, more blues-oriented, and Peter was getting a little frustrated by this. Not that he didn't like that, but Peter was the melodic side of the band, the sweeter side of the band.
We were very successful now, and you know, no one wanted to rock the boat.
Whilst the live album was being mixed and getting ready for release, Peter made his decision to leave the band. We mixed it one time on our own in Olympic Studios in London, and Dee came to hear it, and we thought we'd done a great job. And Dee heard it, and he was kind of sullen-faced, and we looked and said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Where's the audience? You forgot the audience." So, and he was right. The atmosphere we'd mixed out. We'd forgotten the ambient mics. So we took it to New York City and remixed it in Electric Ladyland Studios with Eddie Kramer, and we brought up the audience mics, and all this beautiful ambience came into play, and the rest is rock and roll history. It sold a lot of records.
That's it. Yeah, right.
When I realised that Colosseum was in its death throes, and I'd heard on the grapevine that Humble Pie were looking for a new guitar player to replace Peter, so I gave Steve a ring, and he invited me out to his house later that day. And I went out and had a great evening with him, just sort of jamming, going through some stuff and talking. And he invited me to a band rehearsal a couple of days later in London. And when I turned up for the rehearsal, most of the British music press were there, and it seemed to have already been decided that I was going to be joining the band.
70s, Steve Marriott, there was Steve Marriott, Rod Stewart, Roger Daltrey. These guys were rock stars. And Steve Marriott was it wasn't called that at the time, but he was a heavy metal rock star. I mean, the guy was distorted guitar and a screaming, wailing voice, playing those big arena rock type songs, you know, Stone Cold Fever, The Fixer, you know, all that stuff.
We were due to go and do our first headline tour of America promoting the live album, which we did actually with Clem, because Peter had already gone. Immediately after that, we went into the studio to start rehearsing and recording Smoking. So there was a lot of freshness and more bluesy feel to the band. Steve played a lot of Hammond organ on there. There was some great guest appearances by people like Steve Stills and others. And it just turned out to be certainly, pound for pound, I guess, our best record.
The very first time I ever met Steve was Olympic Studios in Barnes in West London. And I'd gone with Jerry Shirley, Humble Pie's drummer, to a session for, I think it was Smoking, the album that they were making at the time. And I remember being in the room, Jerry was sitting at the piano and Steve walked in these huge doors. And I just remember thinking my first impression was how small he was, because he was, I guess, not much more than 5'2", 5'3". It still amazes me that that voice would come out of this little person who had this, just such vibrancy. I think he was incredibly special.
Hot and Nasty started, as most of our co-written songs did, as a jam in the studio. Steve was at Hammond organ, and I'd started to hit a beat along with the lick he was playing. It was like, ah, do it, and that was like, ha, yeah. And Greg joined in with that classic bass line of his. Clem joined in with a lovely guitar line, and we got it, I think, in the first take, or at least the second take, the backtrack. Later on that evening, Steve Stills showed up, and we got everything done, except we didn't have an actual vocal hook. And between Steve Stills and Steve Marriott, they came up with the "Do you get the message?" Except it took them 48 hours, and 4/5 of Jack Daniels, and God knows how much Peruvian love dust to do it. But it was a great session.
I did go to a lot of those sessions on quite a lot of occasions in the evenings, and used to sit around and just watch them perform the tracks. And I actually did get a credit on the album eventually. I think it says thanks to Stephen Stills and Ricky Wills, but all I ever did was roll joints, actually. I don't know if you're allowed to say that, but that's what I was there primarily to do. Keep the boys grinning.
Steve had always had this idea, if you like, of working with black-coloured singers, and he produced 3 excellent singers from Mike and Tina Turner's Ikettes and Ray Charles Raelettes, and they become the Blackberries, and Steve took them out on the road with him in '73.
When we recorded that album, Steve's personal life had become a mess. He was about to lose the one true love of his life, being Jenny Marriott.
When we split up, when I couldn't, it was sink or swim for me in the end, and it was devastating. But I had to get out because it was madness.
The loss of Jenny Marriott absolutely devastated Steve, and in some ways he was never quite the same after that. And we recorded that album right in the middle of that breakup.
Steve had his own little studio situation at his house in Essex when I joined the band, but it was just a very basic home recording setup with a couple of Reeboxes. when the money started to come in from the success of Smokin' and the American tours, Steve decided that he would like to put the real stuff in there so that we could actually record there for real.
The room allowed you to put lots of bass on, and it sounded great in there. You took it out, and it was so swamped with bass frequency that it was very difficult to cut onto vinyl. And unfortunately, Eat It suffered as a result of that. That was the point where the freedom that we had at that point being given was starting to be questioned by the Jerry Mosses of the world, because the expectations of that record did not meet up, you know, it didn't do what we had hoped it was going to do. That was going to be our coup de grace, that was going to be the big one. And instead of it being that, we literally did eat it.
Jerry and myself particularly felt that we needed to try to get Steve away from his own studio at that stage, just because things were getting a bit crazy. Steve had an incredible amount of energy, and he found it very difficult to switch off and walk away from it. And
the band were becoming more and more disheartened by the financial state of affairs. We started to see that we had signed this bizarre piece of paper that had taken all of the financial control out of our hands.
By sort of 1974, or late 1974, Humble Pie was starting to disintegrate in the same way, really, that the Small Faces had done sort of 5 years earlier.
We were up at Private's, and this guitar was given to me by, this is a Tokai guitar, I think it was, by this lovely little Japanese girl who wanted me to use Tokai guitars. She gave me the guitar, and Steve took this picture, took the guitar from me, and smashed it into about 30 pieces. And I was like, Steve, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, come on, man, it's just rock and roll, man. We'll get you another one. Don't worry about it, baby. You know? I mean, you couldn't yell at him. It was Steve, you know?
I mean, immediately the Humble Pie thing had finished. Steve began rehearsing a new band called the Steve Marriott's All-Stars, which also featured Greg from Humble Pie. In 1975, Ichiku Park was reissued and very unexpectedly charted in the UK. And there was pressure then on Steve to get the boys back together again to do some promotional work for TV.
I was fast asleep one night, about 4:30 in the morning, the phone rang. And lo and behold, it was the one and only Marriott down the other end of the line going, "Hi, Rick." And I said, "Hi, Steve." He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm asleep." He said, "No, man, get up." He said, "We're in the studio. You got to come and join us." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, we're just falling out of Ronnie. In fact, I think I just whacked him," he said. He's run off down the road. He said, "You've got to come and join us." And I said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, we've got the Small Faces back together." He said, "I'm here with Kenny and Mac, and we want you to come and play with us."
The Small Faces Mark II, as fans tend to remember it, it ended in failure, really. They never got the same sort of atmosphere, and I think in hindsight, the band members, looking at it now, would say perhaps we shouldn't have done it. Soon after the split of the Small Faces Mark II, Steve moved out to America. He moved to Atlanta, Georgia, with his wife at the time, Pam, who came from Atlanta, Georgia.
David Krebs had asked us to try and put Humble Pie back together. Steve had come to New York, and David Krebs put us to a test. He said, "Right, I want you to go to the country where I lived at the time and write me a hit record and come back on Monday morning, 9 o'clock, and record it." It was played to Doug Morris, who was at the time the head of Atco Records, and there was a line in it that Steve stole from, I think, again, Hank Williams, And Doug Morris signed us on the strength of A, that line, and B, the fact that his 16-year-old daughter heard it being played and loved it. We recorded 2 albums for Atco. The first one, with Fall for a Pretty Face on it, did fairly well. The second one didn't do well at all. We had a release party for the album, and unbeknownst to us, this guy from Atco comes into the dressing room, introduces himself and says, I'm the head of something or other at Atco Promotions, I think. And so Steve looks at him and says, well, what the f are you doing here? You should be out there promoting it. Now, f off. And it threw the guy out of the dressing room. The following Monday morning, there's a memo goes round Atco Records apparently saying, do not work this record. And so that's what happened to Go for the Throat, the second record for Atco. And not many months after that, Lieber and Krebs quite rightly pulled the financial plug on us, and we had no choice but to disband.
During Steve's stay in America, he was in America for approximately 4 years. I mean, he really, his world really come crashing down. I mean, his marriage broke up. Throughout the 80s, with various lineups, the Packet of Three, there was the Official Receivers, Steve Marriott and the DTs, Steve Marriott's next band, and they just toured and gigged all the time, not non-stop, throughout the 1980s. The last Packet of Three lineup featuring Jim Leverton. Jim was there all the way along really, except for when Steve had a spell with the DTs. Jim was in all the other lineups.
At the time we actually got together, he was in a band called the Official Receivers. And then he went from that to Steve with the DTs, and then from that to the next band, and from the next band back to a Packet of Three.
Steve got a call in early '91 from Peter Frampton, of all people. Steve hadn't had any contact with Peter for years.
I wasn't in the mood to do a Peter Frampton record at this point, and thought this would be a great time to go and do something else. So I tried to think, first of all, I said, well, I'm going to put a band together. I'll do a band, get some other people together and do something just completely different. Co-write with everybody and do that. So I was auditioning all these people, and I was looking for Steve Marriott for obvious reasons. And funny thing was, I couldn't find him. Not in somebody else, anyway. So that's when I decided to call up Steve and said, what are you up to? You fancy writing a couple of songs and see if we can still do it? So he thought about it for a minute, and he said, well, I'm pretty happy doing what I'm doing. I said, well, all right, okay. He said, well, but if you want to come over, that's okay. I felt the juices flowing again. He decided that he was going to come out, get a place in Santa Monica. I had a little studio down in the valley in Los Angeles, and we were going to write and do some demos, put a band together, which we did. We started seeing record companies, publishing company, we started doing the whole rounds again. And it looked like things were going really well. And at the time when everything seemed to be coming to the point where some of the big labels were really interested, Steve decided that he was just going to go home. That was it.
We was just really glad to be going home. Steve's mate picked us up at the airport, and he dropped us off home. We had a bit of a row, made it up, decided to go out for something to eat at his favourite restaurant.
He'd gone out for a meal with some friends at the Straw Hat restaurant in Sawbridgeworth during the evening. I think they had a good meal, had quite a bit to drink, and they went back to a friend's house to stay the evening. The friend actually put Steve and his wife, tucked them up, I think, in bed, and basically that was going to be that. Steve had decided, for some reason, that he wanted to go home to his own place, and at about 1:30 in the morning, he phoned for a taxi and went home alone. 4 hours later, a passing motorist had seen the house alight and phoned the fire brigade from a telephone box just outside Steve's house, and the rest we all know about. And unfortunately, Steve was found dead in an airing cupboard. I understand that either side of Steve's bed there was a door. One was a door to the landing and one was the door to a cupboard, and unfortunately, in all the panic, Steve had taken the wrong door.
I'd like to think that we would have finished it, but it wasn't to be.
Anyone doing that one? Which one? 30. I'm doing it.
30 days in the hole. Yeah. 30 days in the hole.
Typical. I went with Ronnie Wood to the funeral, and we got late because trying to get Ronnie anywhere on time is like impossible. And we got there, and it was pouring with rain, and we got there, and the grave had just been filled in with flowers, and everyone had gone. So it was just me and Woody, like paying our final respect.
Remember, like, there was like a blurb on MTV like that, like there was like a thing about the new kids on the block, and then, oh yeah, this guy who was in this band passed away, and I was like, man, that's, I mean, that right there showed me how like silly things like MTV are.